The cold streets of London. The city of London never slept. It glittered with dreams, yet in its shadows lived the forgotten ones. Hey, my beautiful family, welcome to A Story a Day. Bring you powerful and deeply loving story. Subscribe please. Among them was Daniel Carter, a 22-year-old man with nothing but a torn backpack, a pair of worn-out shoes, and a heart that refused to give up. The world had not been kind to Daniel. His father had left when he was 10. His mother had passed away from cancer when he was 17, and the little apartment they lived in was taken by the bank when he couldn't pay the bills. He had once been a bright student with a passion for engineering, but hunger didn't care about dreams. Every night, Daniel slept near the King's Cross station under a broken streetlight. The cold concrete was his bed, and his stomach growled more often than he spoke. Yet, even in his darkest hours, Daniel believed something. One day, I won't just survive, I'll live. And I'll help others live too. The stranger with coffee. It was a freezing November morning. Daniel sat by the steps of a coffee shop, rubbing his hands to stay warm. People passed by, some glanced with pity, some with disgust, and most without noticing at all. Then came a woman, tall, elegant, in her mid-30s, wearing a navy blue coat. She stopped. Her name was Amelia Ross, a marketing executive who worked across the street. She held a hot cup of coffee in her hand. "Have you eaten anything?" she asked softly. Daniel looked up, surprised. "Not today, ma'am, but I'll manage." Without hesitation, she handed him her cup. "You don't have to manage alone." It was the first warm thing that touched Daniel's hands in weeks, and not just the coffee. Her kindness hit deeper. That morning changed something in him. A job offer nobody wanted. Amelia began greeting Daniel every morning after that. Sometimes she gave him leftover sandwiches, sometimes just a smile. One day, she said, "Daniel, our office needs someone to clean the parking lot and take out the trash. It's not much, but it's a start." He accepted instantly. For the first time in years, Daniel had a place to go, a purpose, however small. He arrived early every day, swept the floors, emptied bins, and fixed broken lights even when no one asked him to. The employees noticed. Some whispered, "That's the homeless guy Amelia hired." But Daniel didn't mind. He was used to whispers. Only now, he had something stronger. Hope. The night of the broken laptop. One evening, as Daniel was locking up, he noticed a laptop lying on a bench in the lobby. Someone must have forgotten it. He picked it up and saw the company name on the cover, Ross & Co. Marketing Agency. He wanted to return it, but the office was closed. Curiosity made him open it. The laptop wasn't password protected, and on the screen was a spreadsheet of sales data. Daniel had studied business basics years ago before life fell apart. Out of habit, he started rearranging the numbers, identifying errors and patterns that could improve the sales report. When he returned the laptop the next morning, Amelia saw the changes and was stunned. "Daniel, did you make these corrections?" "Yes," he replied nervously. "Used to study finance before everything." She smiled in disbelief. "You just fixed something that my junior analysts couldn't figure out for a week." That was the day Amelia decided to give him a chance beyond sweeping floors. The small desk in the corner. Daniel was offered an intern seat, a small desk in the corner of the office. He was given an old desktop computer and the lowest pay possible, but to him, it felt like a throne. Days turned into weeks. His hunger was replaced by purpose, and his nights were filled with dreams, not of food, but of building something great. He learned everything: marketing, finance, digital strategy from free online courses. After work, he stayed late, cleaning, studying, observing. Amelia once caught him watching a lecture at a "Go home, Daniel," she said kindly. He smiled. "This is my home." The investor. 6 months later, Ross & Co. was facing a crisis. Their biggest client had backed out, and the company was on the verge of shutting down. Amelia was under pressure, and Daniel, though just an intern, couldn't bear to watch her struggle. He stayed up all night analyzing the market and came up with a bold new marketing strategy for small local businesses: affordable, digital first, and scalable. The next morning, he nervously shared it with Amelia. She read it, her eyes wide. "This could actually work," she whispered. Within 3 months, the new model brought in dozens of clients and saved the company. Daniel's idea became their turning point. The CEO, Mr. Howard Ross, Amelia's father, called him to the boardroom. "Son," he said, "where did you learn all this?" Daniel simply replied, "On the streets. You learn how to see what others miss." From employee to partner. By the end of the year, Daniel was no longer the janitor, he was the company's strategic director. He wore a suit now, though he still walked home through the same streets that once ignored him. Sometimes he'd buy meals for the homeless there, remembering where he came from. Amelia, proud of him, often said, "You didn't just rebuild your life, Daniel, you inspired mine." There was a quiet connection between them, not romantic yet, but deep. She believed in him when the world didn't, and he respected her more than words could say. The last night on the street. One cold evening, Daniel stood under that same street light where he once slept. He placed a hot coffee cup there, the same kind Amelia had once given him, and whispered, "For the next dreamer who refuses to give up." As he turned away, the city lights reflected in his eyes, not as tears this time, but as hope reborn. That night marked the end of Daniel's homelessness and the beginning of his destiny. The rise of the visionary. The winter that once froze Daniel's fingers was now a memory. A year after that fateful coffee, life had begun to bloom for him. His transformation at Ross & Co. was the talk of the office, from the man who once swept the floors to the one who now led meetings. But Daniel wasn't content with stability. Stability was safety, and he had lived too long without it. What he wanted now was freedom, the kind that let him build something that couldn't be taken away again. A dream beyond the office. One evening, as the office lights dimmed, Daniel sat by the window, staring at the glowing skyline of London. He spoke softly to Amelia, who was finishing up her presentation beside him. "Amelia," he said, "have you ever thought about starting something of your own?" She smiled. "Everyone dreams of it, Daniel. Few have the courage to do it." Daniel turned toward her. His eyes had that same fire she'd seen the first day she offered him coffee. "I'm thinking of starting a digital brand incubator, helping small businesses grow online. I've been homeless, Amelia. I know how it feels to have a good idea and no one to believe in it." Amelia looked at him, half in admiration, half in concern. "That's a massive risk." "I've lived through worse risks," he replied with a quiet laugh. She saw it then. He wasn't just talking about a company, he was talking about a calling. The leap of faith. Leaving Ross & Co. wasn't easy. Amelia's father tried to convince him to stay. "You have a safe position here, Daniel. People trust you. Why throw that away?" Daniel smiled respectfully. "Because I didn't come this far to play it safe, sir. I came this far to build something that matters." With Amelia's blessing, and £10,000 saved from his salary, Daniel registered his startup, Phoenix Edge Digital. He chose the name because it symbolized rebirth from ashes. The story of his life. He rented a small room above a cafe in Shoreditch, bought a used laptop, and hired 2 interns he found through a community shelter program. "If nobody gave me a chance," he told them, "I wouldn't be here today, so I'll give you yours." The struggle begins. Reality hit fast. The cafe's Wi-Fi often broke down, clients ghosted after meetings, and the first 3 marketing projects failed miserably. Daniel worked 18 hours a day, skipping meals, often sleeping on the office couch. His interns began losing faith. One of them, Leo, said, "Maybe you were meant to be an employee, not a boss." Daniel didn't argue, he just said, "I used to sleep under bridges. Now, I have a roof over my head. That means I've already won." But even as optimism began to crack, bills piled up. Rent was due, his laptop crashed, and the bank account showed only £128. That night, he stood in the rain outside the cafe, wondering if the universe was testing him again or simply telling him to quit. Amelia's visit. 2 days later, a familiar car pulled up outside his tiny office. It was Amelia. She walked in, her heels clicking against the worn wooden floor. "This place smells like burnt coffee," she joked. Daniel smiled weakly. "That's the scent of startup dreams burning slowly." She looked around, posters on the walls, half-finished projects, and Daniel's tired face. "You're struggling," she said gently. "I'm learning," he corrected her. Without another word, she placed a small envelope on his desk. Inside were 5 checks, each from different small businesses. "I convinced a few local clients to trust you," she said. "Don't make me regret it." Daniel looked up, emotion flooding his eyes. "Why are you helping me again?" "Because I believe in what you're building," she said. "And maybe because I believe in you." Sighed. "Then I'll make sure I do." But before Daniel could act, the storm arrived faster than he imagined. The media storm. One cold morning, headlines screamed, "Billionaire Daniel Carter accused of financial fraud, Phoenix Edge under investigation." Social media exploded. Investors panicked. Clients withdrew. The man once praised for integrity was suddenly branded a criminal. Amelia rushed into Daniel's office, her face pale. "We need to hold a press conference." "I didn't do any of this," Daniel said quietly, eyes filled with disbelief. "You know that, Amelia?" "I do," she whispered, placing her hand on his. "But the world doesn't, not yet." The fall. Charles vanished 2 days later. The accounts he'd created were traced to him, but the damage was done. The company's reputation had taken a brutal hit. In a single week, Phoenix Edge lost 40% of its clients. Journalists camped outside his home. Former employees began selling stories to tabloids. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something. He thought he'd left behind helplessness. He sat alone in his office late at night, staring at the glowing city. Everything he'd built, the empire, the respect, the legacy, all seemed to crumble. And then he whispered to himself, "Maybe I was never meant to have all this. Maybe the streets were always my truth." But as he sat in silence, the door opened softly. Amelia stood there. "Don't you dare say that again," she said firmly. "You earned every brick of this empire with honesty. You lifted hundreds out of poverty. You matter, Daniel, far more than this moment of chaos." He looked up, his eyes tired but searching. "What if I can't fix it this time?" She smiled faintly. "Then we rebuild again like we always do." The fight back. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency press conference. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to the podium, calm yet commanding. "I built Phoenix Edge from nothing," he began, voice steady. "I know what it feels like to lose everything. But I also know truth doesn't fear time. We'll cooperate with every investigation. And when the truth comes out, we'll still be standing." It was short, raw, and real, just like Daniel himself. Amelia and Noah worked day and night gathering evidence. Within weeks, they found a trail of offshore transactions, all linked directly to Charles Whitman. Finally, the police arrested him in Spain while he tried to flee with millions of stolen funds. When the news broke, Daniel's name was cleared, but the world had already moved on to its next scandal. The weight of betrayal. Even though justice was served, Daniel was changed. He no longer trusted easily. The betrayal of a man he had trusted with everything left a scar. Amelia noticed it in his silence, his late nights staring out windows, his smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Daniel," she said one evening as they sat on the office terrace, "you can't carry every wound. You have to let people in again." He sighed. "I built everything from nothing, Amelia. Every time I start to trust, something breaks." She leaned closer, "Then let it break. Because the right people will help you rebuild." Their eyes met again. The same warmth that had sparked years ago returned, stronger this time. But before Daniel could speak, Noah rushed out, breathless. "Sir, you need to see this." On his phone was a viral video of a young homeless boy on YouTube, thanking the billionaire who never forgot us. "Mr. Carter visits every week," the boy said. "He brings food, laptops, and tells us we can make it. Don't believe what the news says. He's our hero." Daniel's throat tightened. Amelia smiled through tears. "The world may forget, but the people you changed never will." A billionaire's real wealth. Months passed. Slowly, Phoenix Edge recovered. Clients returned, and Daniel's public image healed, but he refused to chase headlines again. Instead, he focused on what mattered: impact. He founded the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit that trained homeless youth in technology and entrepreneurship. Noah ran it full time, and Daniel often taught classes himself. He'd walk into the room in jeans, no suit, and tell them, "You're looking at a man who once slept where you sleep. The difference between us isn't luck, it's time and belief." The foundation grew internationally, helping thousands across cities. Daniel's name once again became synonymous not with luxury, but with legacy. Love in the shadows. One quiet night, after a charity gala, Daniel and Amelia walked by the Thames. The air was cool, the city lights reflecting on the water. "You've built an empire of hearts," Amelia said softly. He smiled. "With you by my side." She stopped walking. "Daniel, you've never said it out loud." He looked at her, the woman who had seen him at his lowest, and stood by him through every storm. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I lost everything again, I'd lose you too." She touched his hand gently. "You can't lose what already belongs to you." He pulled her close, the city fading behind them. "Then I guess I finally found what's worth more than every billion I'll ever make." And under the soft glow of the bridge lights, he kissed her, not like a man who had conquered the world, but like one who had finally found peace. The lesson of greatness. Years later, when reporters asked Daniel about his success, he said something that echoed through generations. "I was homeless once, but not just without a house. I was homeless in spirit, in belief. True wealth isn't in what you build, but in what you give. I was rich the day someone gave me coffee and hope. Everything after that was just interest." The legacy of light. The morning sun poured over London's skyline, reflecting off the glass walls of Phoenix Tower. Inside the top floor, Daniel Carter stood looking out, the city alive beneath him. His reflection looked older now, silver strands in his dark hair, lines of wisdom on his face. But his eyes still held that same fire that once burned under the dim streetlight at King's Cross. It had been 15 years since the day Amelia offered him coffee, and everything had changed, not just for him, but for thousands who followed his path. Phoenix Edge Digital had become one of the world's most respected global empires, and the Phoenix Foundation, his heart's true creation, had grown into a network that trained and employed over 50,000 former homeless youth across 20 countries. But with great impact came heavy burdens, and Daniel was about to face one that would test his belief, his vision, and his heart. The boardroom debate. The conference room buzzed with tension. The board of directors had gathered, some loyal, others hungry for control. Amelia sat beside Daniel, her calm presence balancing the rising voices around the long glass table. A young investor, Nathan Green, leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Daniel, with all due respect, the foundation's expansion into developing nations is draining company resources. We should focus on profit-driven ventures." Daniel's voice was steady. "Nathan, we were born from struggle. Phoenix Edge doesn't exist just to make money, it exists to give others the same chance I was given." Nathan smirked slightly. "That's noble, sir, but noble doesn't pay shareholders." The room went silent. Amelia turned to him, her tone cool. "If this company ever forgets its soul, it won't matter how much it earns. Daniel's vision made us great, not greed." Daniel nodded in gratitude, but deep inside, he knew this argument wasn't going away. The bigger an empire grows, the further its heart drifts from where it began. The next generation. That evening, Daniel visited the new Phoenix Academy on the outskirts of London, a massive glass and steel campus filled with young people learning coding, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Among them was Noah, now in his late 20s, running the foundation with a mix of energy and compassion that reminded Daniel of his younger self. "Sir," Noah grinned as Daniel arrived, "the new training wing opens next week. You'll love it. We named it the Amelia Carter Hall." Daniel turned to Amelia, surprise. She blushed. "I told them not to." He smiled softly. "You deserve it. You've been my strength longer than you'll ever admit." The students swarmed around him, eager, inspired. One of them, a girl named Lena, shyly asked, "Mr. Carter, do you ever get tired of helping people?" He chuckled. "Never, because every time I help someone rise, I see the man I used to be." Whispers of change. But not everyone shared his passion for giving. Within the corporate structure of Phoenix Edge, Nathan and a few other board members began quietly consolidating power. They wanted to push Daniel into a ceremonial position to make him the face of the brand while they controlled operations. Amelia discovered the plan during a closed meeting she wasn't meant to hear. Furious, she confronted Nathan afterward. "You think you can just sideline the man who built this company from the ground up?" Nathan smirked. "The world changes, Mrs. Carter. Daniel's heart may be pure, but purity doesn't scale. The next era of Phoenix needs sharper teeth." Her eyes blazed. "You'll regret underestimating him." When Daniel learned of it, he didn't react with anger. Instead, he said quietly, "Let them try. I've been stripped of everything before. They can't take what truly matters." The health scare. One morning, Daniel collapsed during a meeting. The room erupted in chaos as Amelia and Noah rushed to his side. The doctors later confirmed exhaustion and stress had taken their toll. He needed rest, real rest, something he hadn't allowed himself in years. Amelia stayed by his hospital bed, holding his hand as he slept. When he awoke, she whispered, "You've carried the world too long, Daniel. Maybe it's time to let someone else carry it too." He looked at her tiredly. "If I stop now, everything I built could lose its way." "Or," she said gently, "maybe it's time to trust the people you've taught." Her words lingered in his heart long after she left the room. The return to King's Cross. A week later, Daniel asked his driver to take him somewhere unexpected. King's Cross Station. He stepped out quietly, walking alone until he found the old streetlight, the same one he had slept under decades ago. It still flickered faintly. He stood there in silence, remembering the hunger, the cold, and that cup of coffee that had changed his fate. He whispered, "It started here, maybe it should end here too, but on my own terms." At that moment, he made a decision that would shock everyone. Passing the torch. At the next annual Global Summit of Phoenix Edge, the auditorium was filled with thousands of employees, journalists, and leaders from around the world. Daniel took the stage, a calm authority radiating from the legacy of the Phoenix. The weight of time. 10 years had passed since Daniel Carter first opened the doors of the Phoenix Foundation. The once homeless boy had become a global symbol of resilience, his name engraved not just on skyscrapers, but in the hearts of millions. But time, even for the greatest, never stops moving. Daniel stood before a sea of students in London's largest university hall. Young faces, eager, curious, burning with ambition, watched him in awe. He smiled gently. "When I was your age, I slept under a bridge and thought the world had forgotten me. Now, stand before you to remind you it's never too late to start." Thunderous applause filled the air. Amelia, sitting in the front row, looked at him with pride and love. She had seen every version of Daniel, broken, fearless, angry, hopeful, and loved each one with the same intensity. A father's dream. After the lecture, Daniel and Amelia drove home to the countryside estate they built together, Ashburn Manor, surrounded by hills and sunlight. Their son, Ethan Carter, ran out of the front door as soon as the car stopped. He was 9, bright, bold, and endlessly curious, just like his father had been. "Dad," Ethan shouted, hugging him tightly, "I got top marks in my computer project." Daniel lifted him with pride. "That's my boy. What did you build this time?" "A weather app, but it also gives motivational quotes when it rains." Ethan grinned. Amelia laughed softly. "Looks like your spirit's catching, Daniel." Daniel kissed her forehead. "That's all I ever wanted to pass on the light." A shadow returns. One autumn evening, as Daniel reviewed reports, his assistant, Noah, now in his early 30s, entered with concern written all over his face. "Daniel, we've received a merger proposal from Titan Global Tech," Noah said. "They're offering £10 billion for Phoenix Edge." Amelia looked up, startled. $10 billion. Daniel leaned back in silence. "They want to buy the company?" "Yes," Noah replied. "They want the brand, the patents, everything. But if we refuse, they'll launch a competitor with double funding." The room fell silent. Amelia finally said, "That company is your life's work, Daniel." Daniel nodded slowly. "Which is why I won't sell it for money. But maybe it can transform it for meaning." The next generation. A few days later, Daniel gathered the senior board and foundation leaders. His voice was calm but full of conviction. "I built Phoenix Edge to make profit. but I built the Phoenix Foundation to make change. It's time to merge both into one new vision. He unveiled his plan. The Phoenix Network, a hybrid global organization where 60% of all company profits would fund education, housing, and tech training for underprivileged youth. Silence filled the room, then applause erupted. Noah wiped his eyes. You're turning capitalism into compassion. Daniel smiled. We rise by lifting others. Always have. Always will. Whispers of doubt. But not everyone supported the plan. Some shareholders accused Daniel of losing focus. You're risking billions for idealism. One said coldly, this isn't charity, it's business. Daniel stood, eyes sharp. When I was homeless, business ignored me. If being human risks billions, then I'll risk everything. His voice echoed strong, defiant, unforgettable. The board voted. The merger passed by a narrow margin. And just like that, the Phoenix Network was born. Half tech empire, half humanitarian revolution. The return to the streets. Months later, Daniel decided to visit his old shelter once more. The same cracked walls. The same faded smell of coffee and rain. A group of boys recognized him instantly. It's him. It's Daniel Carter. He smiled, kneeling beside them. Oh, it's just Daniel. One of the boys asked, Sir, how did you know you'd make it? Daniel looked around the rusted beds, the damp floor, and said softly, I didn't know. I just refused to believe that this was the end. The fall and the miracle. Weeks later, tragedy struck. Daniel was driving home one rainy night when another car lost control and hit him at an intersection. He was rushed to the hospital unconscious. For 3 days, he remained in critical condition. Amelia never left his side. She held his hand and whispered, You fought the world, Daniel. Please fight one more time for me, for Ethan. Noah stood behind her, wet. The world still needs him. Then, on the 4th morning, Daniel opened his eyes weakly. His first words were a whisper. Did I miss Monday's meeting? Amelia burst into tears of laughter and relief. You stubborn man. He smiled faintly. Yes, the phoenix isn't done rising. The legacy of the phoenix. Months later, Daniel fully recovered, but the near-death experience changed him. He began mentoring young entrepreneurs personally, not just in business, but in life. He taught them kindness, humility, and perseverance. At the 10th anniversary of the Phoenix Foundation, Daniel gave one last emotional speech. People often ask me how it feels to be a billionaire. I tell them wealth didn't make me free, love did, compassion did. Every time someone believed in me, it got richer. He looked at Amelia, then Ethan, then Noah, and smiled. When you rise, don't rise alone, bring others with you. That's the only kind of success that lasts. Thunderous applause followed, but Daniel only heard one sound. The laughter of his family. The heart of everything he built. Years later, Ethan Carter, now grown and leading the Phoenix Network, walked through the same London streets where his father once slept. A plaque stood at the old shelter's entrance, in honor of Daniel Carter, who taught the world that no man is too broken to rebuild. Ethan smiled softly. Dad, you did it. He turned to a young homeless girl nearby and handed her a laptop. Start here, he said. My dad once started with nothing too. She looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. What was his name? Ethan smiled. Daniel Carter, the man who rose from the ashes. Final lines. And somewhere in the silence of the city night, the echo of Daniel's voice lingered. A whisper carried by the wind. Forever inspiring. You can lose everything but never lose the fire that says you'll rise again.